So I'm very passionate about the internet, but there's a big problem I have with the internet at the moment. It's basically a centralised platform. What we want to move towards is a decentralised platform. What we've got at the moment is these networks of people that are connecting to each other, but what they're doing is they're creating social networks of people, but we're not creating networks of computers. We're all basically connecting to each other through our computers to centralised platforms. And centralised platforms have this big problem. They're very expensive to create. And there's lots of really hard things to do to solve these. So we create these isolated islands of information and we spend a lot of money trying to protect them. Lots of really expensive band-aids, essentially. That's not really how the internet was designed, but that's how it's basically evolved to now. So let's have a look at some of the technologies and other things happening in the industry at the moment to see what we can change. One of these is storage. You'll soon have a petabyte in your pocket because basically you've got a huge increase in storage. This is a logarithmic scale on the right-hand side for those graph people out there. I guess the other thing I want you to think about is when we talk about broadband, we often think about just the raw speed or the cap that you have. But what's really important these days is actually thinking about latency, right? Latency is very important because it's how long it takes for the information to get back and forth, because it can feel like little bits of information are getting left behind. The other issue that we have with the increased use of Wi-Fi networks and mobile broadband is that we basically get network constraints. So a lot of people in the single areas trying to access information. You'll experience here tonight, lots of people, the Wi-Fi would have been great to start with, but it basically deteriorates over time because bits of information end up getting left behind. What we need to think about is how do we design better applications to deal with these network constraints? So what I'm interested in is how do we decentralise these systems? We have to think about mobile phones. I mean, the processing has increased dramatically. Now in your pocket you essentially can have a couple of gigahertz coming soon, but also we're going to have multi-core processors. So we've got an enormous amount of processing capability with us, distributed, connected to these networks. So to recap, we've basically got lots of people using the internet in a decentralised manner. So in a centralised manner, we've got networks that have problems with connectivity, so we need to look at alternative ways to provide solutions for these. So one way we can do that is creating thicker clients, they're called, basically using things like Skype, which you would have used, and peer-to-peer networks. So these are decentralised. No single computer has all the information on it. They rely on each other. Nodes can appear and disappear, and the information will still flow around. We need to start creating more applications like this because otherwise we're relying on centralised platforms of isolated islands of information. One way we can do that is looking at browser technology that's coming, which is basically browsers are starting to become really, they've essentially got a database inside them, they've got a compiler, they're very complicated pieces of information. But what we can do is we can create applications in those that really allow us using standards to create complete applications that use this network information to provide great solutions. Another decentralised processing that you may have heard about is Diaspora. It's an alternative to Facebook. This is important because Facebook is essentially, as I said before, a central processor. Diaspora is separate. You'll all have instances of Diaspora running either locally or for you. So let's go through an example. I want to upload my cat, right? First I upload my cat, and then my friend has a copy of that cat, so we can start to distribute that cat around the network. And as that cat becomes really important and interesting, lots of people can access that cat, but not through one machine, through lots of machines. So we've essentially distributed that. A lot of talk about this comes around privacy, but that can be a bit of an endless debate. What we want to talk about is thinking about how we can control the access to that. With Diaspora, you'll be able to have a messaging platform and basically remove the cat. But I think what we need to do is, why we need to think about these issues is because there's some really big problems that we out there in the world, right? And centralised processing is not going to solve those. We've got these really rich clients out there, we've got huge amounts of processing, but we're not utilising them. There's lots of problems, right? Some of these you won't have thought of yet, or you won't have thought about solving because they're just too hard to solve. The people in this room need to be able to design network-coupled applications and take advantage of both the network and also the processing capability you've got in your pocket to solve some of these problems. Thanks very much. you.